Holy smokes! Holy smokes, do you believe what we just saw, Meghan? The Avs trailed 3-0, 4-2, then 5-3 late in the third, and they win 6-5 in overtime. The Avs and the Sabres just can't have a normal game, I guess, Meghan. A lot to unpack in this one. Scott Wedgewood goes down with a scary injury. Avs are able to make the comeback late. A lot to get into. We got your guys' questions, and we are going to get into them right now. Meghan, starting off from Sarah. When are the Avs going to be done with the KC experiment? It's beyond slump, and more just isn't good enough. Roast me. IDGAF. They need more from him, and like yesterday.
I want to give Sarah some credit because I think she had submitted that question before the power play goal, where he had a secondary assist. But there's other reasons that I liked Casey Mittelstadt's game tonight, and so respectfully, I just don't agree with that opinion. I do think it's obvious to anyone watching Casey Mittelstadt was in a bit of a funk, but since the last game, he continued strong play into tonight being one of the best possession lines, so much so between him and Colton leading the 5v5 possession game, making very few mistakes, allowing very few scoring chances against. When Lehkonen and that top line weren't really going, that was sort of the swap that was made. Drouin moved up in that case to get Lehkonen hopefully going then with the strong possession play of both Mittelstadt and Colton, and that was through 2 periods of play, but then obviously a contributor on the Mikko Rantanen power play goal with a strong play below the goal line, which is exactly what we've been hoping for Casey Mittelstadt to do a little bit more of, and he ties the team lead in shots on net. That has been a part of his game that has also been a little bit quieter, and so he's continuing to ramp up his shooting. I think that this was another strong game from Casey Mittelstadt to continue building upon, so I'm not ready to give up on the Mittelstadt experiment for a second.
She wanted to make sure Sarah got credit and didn't roast her, but I'm going to. Sarah, you picked the worst night to bring up Casey Mittelstadt not being good. You had like 3 weeks or a month to do it, and his last 2 games have been among his best that we've seen in a while. I thought he was really good tonight, Meghan. I'm with you. The advanced metrics said that he had a good night. He held the puck well. I thought his line drove play. He looked engaged. He looked involved. Like I said, Sarah, you had a lot of opportunities to get at Casey Mittelstadt. And unfortunately, Sarah, this isn't an experiment. Casey Mittelstadt's here for the long haul. He is going to be the Avs 2C for the foreseeable future. And it's because of games like tonight and when he plays the way that he did here tonight in this comeback victory. Moving on here. From Brian. I've kind of felt all season, but tonight in particular feels like the Avs play to the level of their opponent.
Another question that I think came in before the end of this game, but is still worth talking about because Devon Toews, he didn't mince words in being disappointed and frustrated that it took something seriously happening to Scott Wedgewood to sort of re-energize the group, and he was frustrated by that. Like, on one hand, he was proud that they were able to flip that switch so quickly, but he was also disappointed that they fell a little bit flat through 2 periods. I will say period by period 1 to 2, they made strides forward, but it still fell a little bit flat. And so I think it is a worthy criticism that the last Buffalo game was also weird and didn't start very well for them. This is a struggling team in the East. Everybody knows it. They've won a couple here lately in their last 5-game segment, but it's been a bad year for the Buffalo Sabres. So I think it's a worthwhile point. I also would like to hope that, one, this is just kind of a characteristic of the regular season Avs, especially one that is as depleted as this Avs group. They're going to have some iffy games. I think the puck management is where I had the biggest criticism tonight that needed to be better. Like, in their own end, they were struggling to break out the puck. And then in terms of creating meaningful offense early in this game, it didn't seem like they were making very good decisions with the puck. It led to some mistakes. And that's where I would like to see some improvement, especially against weaker teams, but any team really, right? Because it's a personal issue. And it's also one that I have confidence that they can improve upon. And I'm okay with the learning lessons happening in the regular season. I have a feeling this is the kind of game in a 7-game playoff series that they can draw upon and look back to if they need to.
Never done.
Exactly, never back down. And I do think that's important, learning lessons to have happen in the regular season. I don't love to see it, but I do like to see what it says about this group when they are able to come back.
Well, it's nice to learn your lessons in a win. It wasn't just these Buffalo games when they were in San Jose, when they were in Anaheim. Those were both games that they had to dig in and find a way to come back on late. You and I both even remarked after the second period that you would have liked to see a better effort from the Avs in the first 40 minutes, given how that last Buffalo game went. So like you said, even though the game ended positively for the Avs, I think it's a worthwhile, at least call out. Very competitive game against the best in the West last outing. Then tonight came out flat and couldn't connect on anything for the first 40 minutes until an injection of emotion with the Wedgewood injury. This kind of feels like it goes right in line with what we were saying a minute ago. But yeah, you don't want to have to wait till an injury to get going.
No, and this is where I'll go back to Devon Toews for a second. I think it's important for the leaders on this team to show that kind of discomfort, that there is a dissatisfaction that it took the injury to Wedgewood to spark this team. And
Jared as well.
Bit critical of how the opening 40 minutes play out for this team. I think that is something to take note of and keep in mind moving forward through this season, that the Avs acknowledge this too. And so what matters most moving forward then is if there's change. And I already think there's been change in how the Avs start most of their games. They were a terrible first period team for a lot of the 10 game segments to start this year. They've been gradually improving upon it. So you don't love to see it fall a little bit flat, but they're also not completely digging themselves in a hole. Now, going down 3-0 is a little bit of a big one, but they survive it. They survive a Jason Zucker hat trick. I think it shows that this team has a lot of mettle.
The last couple here are about the Scott Wedgewood play and the non-whistle, we'll call it. And so we're just going to kind of lump them together, and you and I think, are just going to kind of give our thoughts. Now, I will say, you might want to go listen to Jared Bednar's thoughts on this first, because Meghan, I have never seen him that upset in a post-game presser, let alone after a win. Fired up about the way that this happened. And look, I'm going to give my take on it real quick, and then I'll turn the floor over to you. I didn't like that. I didn't like the way that played out, and it was because of all the things that Jared Bednar and Devon Toews and Mikko Rantanen brought up. This is a player safety issue. Yes, it costs the Avs a goal, and that's what leads to the maybe overwhelming frustration, but it's a player safety issue. And he even brought up Matt Calvert from a couple years ago when he took a puck to the side of the head, was bleeding out of his ear on the ice in the slot. The refs didn't blow the whistle, and he took another puck off his back. That one didn't cost the Avs a goal, Meghan, but again, Jared Bednar brings it up when referencing the inconsistency and the frustration around player safety, saying this is about player safety, not about us giving up a goal. This is about the fact that we had a player who was down in the net and was in a vulnerable position. And he used the example of, if that puck goes out high and Rasmus Dahlin gets a hold of a 105-mile-an-hour slap shot, that's a dangerous situation for Scott Wedgewood. I think he's 100% bang on. I think that the league needs to seriously take a look at what happened here tonight, talk to the officials that were on the ice and say, what happened? What is going through your head? Because the explanation that Jared Bednar was allegedly given, to me, Meghan, is unacceptable. Oh, well, your guy pushed him in, so we're not blowing a whistle. Doesn't matter how hurt the goalie is, how unable he is to play the position. We're not blowing the whistle because your guy pushed him in. To me, it doesn't matter if an Avalanche player is the one who ran into him. When a player is down on the ice, hurting in a vulnerable position in a dangerous part of the ice, you got to blow the whistle, full stop. It's a player safety problem, not a goal against problem. And as I have said for what feels like the 1,000th time in the last year, there needs to be an official made available after the game to someone, whether it's a pool reporter, a group of reporters, whatever. We just need to get explanations on, what did you guys see? What did you think of this?
It's pretty simple to me, the glaring issue with how the rules are written to respond to player injury. There are so much clearer guidelines, parameters that exist for the skaters as opposed to the goaltenders. Yep. And I think that's where this will be a turning point. There needs to be clear language around any injury to a player, goaltender, or skater. And if they need to make distinctions, it still shouldn't apply tonight when a player is seriously injured. I don't care if Scott Wedgewood injured himself.
Yeah, yep.
If he's seriously injured, the play should be stopped. And the language in the rule book actually does reserve the right to the officials to blow that play dead. And so it's optional, though. And that's what I don't like about the language of how it's currently written, that the refs could have blown that play dead. But there's not this disciplinary action for if they don't and a player seriously injured and play resumes. And that's where I think there's a huge issue coming out of tonight. It sets that dangerous precedent then that this could be ruled very similarly in the future, but there's serious injury to a player that has happened. And to Jared Bednar's point, once the injury has happened, it's already happened. It's too late. And so now you're just trying to problem solve like in a crisis. And I think that's where I take a lot of issue then with how this is called and where I'd want an explanation from the officials. Why didn't you deem that serious enough? He's writhing in pain in the back of the net. And there's enough time, too, from Benson falling onto him, coming out, moving the puck behind the net.
Collecting it from the corner where no one had it.
Which is where there's ample opportunity for the refs to not only see that this player is seriously injured, but he's staying down. And that's where I think there needs to be some responsibility. And honestly, because the language in the rulebook is a little bit unclear, I also think the refs are probably looking at that a little unsure. They can blow the whistle, but they don't have to. And that's where it needs to get clearer from the league, because it sets a terrible and dangerous precedent. And I think Jared Bednar has every right to be just as angry as he was tonight. And I also think the distinction that he didn't really believe it was goalie interference. He really didn't believe it was goalie interference. You kind of asked it in the way of protest, and I think that's an important distinction. He is not still banging that drum that he believes this was goalie interference, but he is pretty clear in saying it's a player safety issue, and he's absolutely right.
That's all we got for you guys here from Ball Arena tonight. We'll be back at practice tomorrow. We'll have plenty more for you on the pod, breaking all this down, and hopefully an update on Scott Wedgewood as well. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. Mark behind the lens here. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.